Bienvenue à le podcast de Philippe. We're diving into cyborg insect swarms today. Uh, you know, it sounds like science fiction, but it's getting real. Tiny robots, part insect, part machine.
It's really moving fast, this field. Lots of possibility.
So where do we even start with this? Like, what makes an insect a cyborg in this context?
Well, you're basically talking about insects with these, like electronic backpacks, tiny little devices, and we can use those to control their movements.
Okay, so not like genetically modifying them, more like adding something external.
Exactly, yeah. Think like sensors and microchips, tiny batteries, all packed into this little backpack. And they interface with the insect's nervous system. We can send signals that way, guide their behavior.
So like a remote control, but for a living thing.
Yeah, kind of, but it's way more complicated than just a remote. We're talking, complex algorithms, control systems that are like modeled after ant colonies even, and real-time feedback so the insects can adapt to what's around them.
Okay, that's where it gets really wild. So you have a whole swarm of these, each with a backpack, all controlled by, what, like a central computer. But how do they work together?
Leader-follower setup. One Cyborg insect leads, the others follow its movements. 19 of them.
Ah, so like a tiny little army with a general.
That's a good way to think about it. The leader gets instructions from us, the humans, and the followers, they use their sensors and the algorithm, keep formation, get around obstacles, adapt to the environment.
So what's the advantage here over just tiny robots? Why not skip the insects altogether?
Well, a few reasons. For one, these cyborgs, super energy efficient. They use their legs just like regular insects. No big clunky motors like robots would need.
So they can operate for a while. That's got to be important for like search and rescue, right? Especially if you're in a remote area.
Absolutely. Plus their size. They can get into places robots couldn't dream of.
Like after an earthquake. Imagine getting into collapsed buildings.
Exactly. Or for checking infrastructure, hazardous environments, places that would be way too risky for people.
So they're like little biomechanical explorers. But, okay, why insects specifically? Why not like birds or something?
Insects, they hit this sweet spot, Plentiful, cheap to get, and their size makes them stealthy, and they're adaptable. Plus, they already swarm, navigate naturally, perfect for this kind of tech.
It's like we're using millions of years of evolution to build new tech.
Yeah, exactly. It's this crazy blend of nature and engineering, something we wouldn't have thought possible just a few decades ago.
Well, we know they're versatile, potentially super useful. Let's get into specifics. What about this search and rescue potential we've been hearing about?
It's huge. Think about a disaster, earthquake, hurricane. Every second counts.
The first 72 hours are critical, right, for finding survivors?
Exactly. And traditional methods, they can be slow, dangerous.
So how would these insect cyborgs be better?
Okay, picture this. You release a swarm into a collapsed building, tiny enough to get deep into the rubble. And they have sensors, can pick up body heat, carbon dioxide, signs of life. They can send that info back to rescuers instantly.
So it's like having a whole team of tiny first responders, blanketing a huge area quickly, safely.
Exactly. And they can get around in unstable structures, reach places where people just couldn't go.
A total game changer for disasters.
Yeah.
What about infrastructure inspection?
Another huge area. Think bridges, pipelines, power lines, even nuclear plants. Places that are really hard or dangerous or expensive to inspect usually.
Yeah, with traditional methods for sure.
These guys, you could equip them with cameras, all sorts of sensors, even ultrasonic detectors. Check the structure, find hazards, collect all this data. Nobody has to risk their neck.
And probably much cheaper too, right?
Yeah.
Than the old ways of doing it.
That's the hope. It's all about working with nature, not against it. Combine that with cutting-edge tech, and you've got solutions that are not just more effective, but more efficient, more sustainable.
Okay, search and rescue, infrastructure. What else is on the horizon?
Well, there's environmental monitoring they're looking into, precision agriculture, even pollination.
So like tracking pollution.
Yeah.
Helping farmers grow more food.
The sky's the limit. We're really just at the beginning of figuring out what's possible.
It's amazing, but I gotta admit, I'm a little, uneasy. Controlling living things, merging them with machines. It feels ethically iffy.
Yeah, I hear you. It's definitely complex. We got to think it through carefully. But, people have been using animals forever, right?
For sure. Horses, dogs, I get it. But this feels different somehow.
Maybe, but we got to look at the potential good too, right? If it can save lives, make things safer, help us understand and protect the environment, maybe that outweighs those ethical concerns.
That's fair. It's always this balance, pushing the boundaries but also being responsible.
Yeah, with a powerful technology like this, the stakes are just higher.
So, what are the big worries we should be thinking about?
Well, first of all, there's the what if things go wrong factor. These are complex systems. We don't understand them completely.
Like, what if one malfunctions, gets out in the wild? Could they become invasive? Mess up an ecosystem?
Those are valid concerns. We got to be very careful to minimize those risks.
And then there's the potential for, bad actors
Yeah.
weaponizing this stuff.
Yeah, that's the dark side. Dual use potential. It could be used for good, like disaster relief, but also bad things like spying or attacks.
Classic dilemma. Amazing technology that could be used for good or evil.
Exactly. We need to be having open and honest conversations about this, about the ethics, the risks, the safeguards we need.
Sounds like we need some serious ground rules. Maybe even international agreements to make sure this technology is used responsibly.
I agree. We need a framework that covers animal welfare, environmental protection, and making sure it isn't misused. So, we were talking about ethical guidelines and regulations. What could those actually look like?
Yeah, it's easy to say we need rules, but what rules?
Right. Well, animal welfare has got to be top of the list. Insects might not tug at the heartstrings like, I don't know, puppies, but they're living things.
We can't just treat them like little machines.
Exactly. We have to make sure that putting those backpacks on them is humane, that we're not causing unnecessary suffering.
So thinking about their well-being, not just preventing them from being misused.
Yeah. Do they feel pain, stress, even fear? We need to know. And we've got to make sure we're not messing up their natural behaviors too much or cutting their lives short.
It makes me wonder, how long can they operate anyway? Don't the batteries run out?
They do have a limited lifespan, a couple of days usually. Depends on the mission, how much energy it takes. But they're already working on ways to make that longer, like wireless charging, even tech that would let the insects recharge themselves from the environment.
Whoa, so like self-sustaining cyborg insects? That's kind of freaky, but also impressive.
It is. The tech is really moving fast. We need to make sure the ethics keep up.
Okay, so animal welfare. What about the environment? We talked about those cyborgs escaping, malfunctioning. Could they really cause problems out in the ecosystem?
It's a possibility, yeah. If they breed with wild insects, those electronics could get passed down, change the species.
And we know what happens with invasive species. Real mess.
Exactly. So researchers are trying to figure out ways to contain that, maybe use sterile insects or modify them so they can't reproduce in the wild.
Like building in safeguards so the solution doesn't become a problem itself.
Right. We got to be thinking ahead, try to prevent those unintended consequences.
All right, let's talk about something else that worries people. Privacy. These cyborgs, with their cameras, sensors, they could be used for spying, right?
The surveillance question is a big one, no doubt. What makes them useful for, like, rescue or inspection also makes them good for spying.
Yeah, you can imagine a tiny insect, camera, microphone, spying on people without them knowing.
That's a serious threat to privacy. We need clear rules, legal and ethical, around using this tech for surveillance.
So, like warrants, limits on where and when they can be used, and ways to stop governments or even just regular people from abusing it.
All of that, yeah. People's privacy and rights need to be protected.
Okay, we've covered a lot. Benefits, ethical concerns, misuse, regulations, a lot to think about before we have swarms of these things flying around.
We're talking about a technology that could change so much. We have to be cautious, have these open discussions, make sure ethical principles are guiding everything we do.
It feels like we're at a turning point. We have this power, but also these big risks.
The age-old question, right? How do we use this amazing new thing for good without letting it hurt us?
So we've talked about the potential, the ethical stuff, the risks, but there's one thing I keep coming back to.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. This whole idea, living things in machines, it really makes you think about some pretty deep questions.
Right, like what does it even mean to be alive?
Right.
Are we changing these insects, their consciousness, by adding this tech? I mean, insects aren't exactly known for deep thoughts, right?
That's a question people have been debating for ages. What is consciousness even? Does it just come from, like, a certain level of complexity, whether it's biological or not?
So a computer, if it was complex enough, could be conscious.
Some people think so, yeah. And if that's true, then what about these cyborgs? They got neurons and microchips. Maybe they're having some kind of experience we just don't get.
Whoa. That's kind of blowing my mind. Like, it makes you question everything you thought you knew about, like being alive.
It challenges the whole idea of what's living and what's a machine, what's natural, what's artificial.
Yeah, it's like, where do you even draw the line? It's exciting, but Kind of scary, too.
It's a good reminder that the world is full of things we don't understand, more complex than we think.
Okay, but back to those cyborg insects.
Yeah.
If they are conscious in some way, does that change things?
Yeah.
Do we have the right to control them, use them like this?
It's a huge ethical question. If they're not just tools, if they have their own experiences, we have to respect that. Their autonomy, their right to exist. It's not just about whether it's useful to us.
It feels like this whole technology is making us rethink our place in nature, what we even mean by nature.
It's a blurrier line than we used to think, that's for sure.
Well, that's about all the time we have for this deep dive. And it has been a deep one. We've seen how powerful cyborg insects could be, but also all these big questions they raise. Ethical questions, risks, the whole deal.
It's a powerful technology. We got to be careful, make wise choices, be responsible. The future of this is really in our hands.
Absolutely. And to everyone listening, thanks for coming along on this journey with us. Hope you found it interesting, thought-provoking. Make sure you subscribe to Le Podcast de Philippe on YouTube. We got more deep dives coming up on all sorts of cool topics. See you next time.